Unpopular take: just buy VU is a recipe for disaster. Now look, there are countless unqualified people out there on the internet who will tell you to do that. But me, I'm a former investment professional, and on this channel, on my team, I have a CFA charter holder who's currently in the industry. Now, I recognize what I'm saying runs counter to what you've probably heard on the internet many times. So in this video, I'm gonna cover who is telling you to just buy VU, why that's become such a popular take, and why I think it's a recipe for disaster. Let's start with the who. Between portfolio managers, analysts, financial advisors, and everything in between, there are thousands of investment professionals out there. And I'm not sure if a single one would advise people to invest all their money in the S&P 500. Mostly, the message comes from people who make investment content but have very limited investment knowledge.
My only investment for retirement is just VOO.
I'm on track to retire with over $20 million from buying and holding this one ETF, ticker symbol VOO.
These may all come with good intentions and they may seem harmless to the untrained eye, but as a former investment professional, the sheer volume of false and baseless claims in a lot of these videos makes me cringe. This guy said he's gonna retire with $20 million by only buying VU, but he also said he's gonna retire with $3 million by only buying VTI, which is pretty much the same thing. So you can't trust everything you hear on the internet. This guy says he's retiring just off VU, but then he also says this 3 ETF portfolio will make you ridiculously rich. Oh, wait, no, actually that portfolio sucks. This new and better 3 ETF portfolio will make you rich. Okay, dude, so here's my expert opinion on why just buy VU has become conventional wisdom and why I think it's such a bad idea. Like I said earlier, it's highly unlikely that any actual investment professional will tell you to put all your money in VU or any other S&P 500 index fund. So the first reason that I think it's become so popular is that the people giving this advice that they say isn't advice don't really know that much about investing. Just buy VU is pretty much all they've got to offer. It's like a doctor who just told every single one of their patients to just eat more vegetables. Diabetes, eat more vegetables. Broken arm, eat more vegetables. While that might be good for a lot of people as part of an overall health plan, it's not complete for anyone. Same for VU. There's nothing wrong with owning it, and owning some of it can be right for a lot of people, but it's not a complete investment portfolio for anyone. The second reason I think it's become so popular is that novice investors usually just look at what's done well recently and assume that's what will always happen. I'm gonna show you an example and then explain why this thought process is so incredibly misguided.
This is the ETF to invest in for optimal safety. Now that old 3-fund portfolio put safety within the portfolio by advocating for bonds. If you were to go with the old version and go with that BND ETF, the bond ETF. BND has a 10-year average return of 1.6%. For the new fund I changed it to, SCHD has a 10-year average return of 11.5%.
Wow, so for optimal safety, you should take out bonds and replace them with stocks because of the return over the last 10 years. Now, is return really the right metric to judge something on for optimal safety? That's kind of like someone going to a car dealer and saying, hey, which minivan has the optimal safety and enough room for my 6 kids? And the dealer says, check out this motorcycle, it's really fast. Yes, stocks have beaten bonds over the last 10 years, duh. But does this look like optimal safety to you? SCHD lost 1/3 of its value in a month, while BND was only down 1.4%. We just went through literally the worst bond market in history in 2022, and BND was down 10% in a year. By the way, short detour, but I couldn't resist including this.
Especially right now with everything being so heavy in technology, AI, and semiconductors. Those types of companies are not in this ETF, and so by investing in this ETF, you're balancing out your portfolio and keeping you very safe. SCHD holds companies like Broadcom.
What kind of company is Broadcom? Oh yeah, it's a technology company that makes semiconductors to power AI. Okay, back to why it's a terrible idea to listen to novice investors who tell you to only buy the S&P 500. Here's one more example.
The international ETF VXUS has brought about 4.6% appreciation on average each year over the past 10 years. That's pretty bad. The one that I'd switch it with has 18.36% on average every year for the past 10 years. Instead of international, this new 3-fund portfolio has a category called growth ETF. These types of ETFs hold very technologically advanced companies that are supposed to grow way faster and larger than normal companies.
Okay, so let's recap his suggestions. He's starting with the Bogleheads 3-fund portfolio that's 60% stocks, 20% bonds for safety, and 20% international stocks for diversification. But instead, he's recommending you replace the bonds with US stocks because they've done better over the last 10 years, and the international with US stocks because they've done better over the last 10 years. Never mind the fact that the US stock fund he recommends for safety is way less safe than bonds, and the US stock funds he recommends for diversification from the S&P 500 are all concentrated in the largest companies in the S&P 500. So they basically provide zero diversification. Here's the problem with that approach. Whether you're looking at the last 3 years, the last 5 years, or the last 10 years, it doesn't matter. Whether you use that to say you should buy US growth for upside or put everything in VU, it doesn't matter. These are all different versions of the same mistake. What's important is understanding that no matter what time frame you look at, the next X years are very unlikely to look like the last X years. Markets are cyclical. If you look back at the last 10 years, you'll see that the US equities have crushed everything. They've beaten international developed market stocks by almost 8% per year, and they've beaten emerging markets by over 9% per year. But what if you'd done the same thing 10 years ago? At the end of 2013, US and international developed markets were pretty much even, and it would have looked like emerging markets were the place to be. But wait, didn't emerging markets do horribly over the next 10 years? Yes, so it's a good thing you didn't look backward and put all your money there, right? As of the end of 1999, you would have looked back and felt pretty similar to the way you feel today. Actually, US stocks had done way better over that 10-year period than they did over the most recent 10-year period. They also beat international stocks by even more, and emerging markets by about the same amount. The internet was going to change everything, and all the leading internet stocks were in the US. Why would anyone want to invest outside the US? You should probably just buy VU, right? Well, over the next 10 years, here's what happened. US stocks actually went down. International stocks beat them, and emerging market stocks crushed them. In fact, if you did what this guy's doing and just picked whichever of these 3 indexes had done best over the past 10 years, do you know how often you would have picked the best one over the next 10 years? Less than 12% of the time. If you did this with the sectors in the S&P 500, do you know how often it would have worked? 0% of the time. Tech has been the leading sector by far over the last 10 years, by the way. Now look, I'm not saying don't buy VU, or don't buy US stocks, or don't buy tech stocks. But is it smart to put all of your money there when historically doing that would have almost never worked out for you? No, in my opinion, that's not a very smart thing to do. By the way, if this is your first time here, I'm Kyle with FOMOs of Finance. I'm a former investment professional. I run this channel with a CFA charter holder who's currently in the industry. So that's why you'll see all of our content checks out. There's no clickbait or outlandish claims about get rich in the stock market in 2024. None of that stuff. So if you appreciate solid, fundamental investment content, subscribe below. Also, we have a free Discord if you want to continue the investment conversation. That link is below in the description as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.